Well, hello everybody. Dan Turbyville, Powerhouse Fence Show, and we're only like, I don't know, 5-ish minutes late, so that's not too bad. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening to this however you are doing so. So, this week I'm going to get into kind of the basics of a plan set. This is something that I've kind of planned on doing as like a some sort of online course for a long time. I've never finished it. I think I've been working on it for like, I don't know, 6 months or so. And I've never finished. And I always thought it'd be challenging to do here because I know a lot of people listen to just the audio. And I am going to share my screen during this show. So uh, if you are listening to the audio and you want to see what we're sharing, you can find this video on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and you can check it out there. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to go into plans a little bit, right? So maybe if somebody's new to plans, I mean, maybe you've done it a long time and you want to try to catch me making a mistake, that's cool. You want to hear a different perspective? So I do have a few sample plan sets, which are ridiculously complicated to try to find. And I'm going to show those and we'll kind of go through some of this stuff about, the way it's named. And we're going to work up to like finding fence and understanding all the symbols, knowing what the page numbers mean and stuff like that. So that'll be the plan. That's where we're going to go. We do have the link to our Make-A-Wish fundraiser still in the description of the show if you are so inclined to participate in that. We have a few sponsors and partners we need to talk about. So we have Simpalo, Memphis Fence Company, and MFC Manufacturing are the sponsors of the show. We partner with the Thornton Fence Consulting Group. And so I met with him earlier this week and we checked out his new Fence Line to Success. There's a new link to it in the description, and there's a bunch of content on there. I mean, he's still building it, but there's a lot of recordings of things that have happened at events and like his book content and a ton of PowerPoints and stuff like that. And it's basically just him doing a voiceover and going through the whole PowerPoints with you. So pretty cool stuff. There's a few other people that are going to contribute, including Powerhouse Fence Show. We'll start putting some of our episodes on there that mainly just the ones that we think are beneficial. I'm not really sure what we're going to do, but there's going to be some episodes there. So check it out. Fence News, we like them. We like their publication and we like Pete and Jake, right? So we put them up there. EZG Manufacturing, they make the big orange machines. So an array of, man, this piece of crap camera is going to drive me insane. They make an array of different fence dispensers and concrete dispensers and hoppers and things like that. We use their products. It's good. I would endorse them. If you're looking for some of that kind of stuff, check them out. If you want to see any of them in action or have questions or anything, you can ask me. I will give you a unbiased answer and do the best that I can. As always, thank you all for being here. I appreciate everybody that listens to the show. It really is for you that we do this. And so it's cool that people want to listen. And if anybody ever has any questions, I mean, you can be something about the show. It can be whatever random thing you want to ask me questions about. Feel free to reach out. The phone number is scrolling normally on the bottom of the screen, 901-878-4987. I have to sneeze. I'm sorry. I do have a couple of kids and they like to get us sick all the time. So there's that. Yeah, but like I said, you can feel free to reach out to me anytime. If you want to be on the show, let me know. If you want us to have a guest on the show or talk about a certain topic or anything else, just reach out and let us know and we'll do the best we can to make that happen. So before I get into the plans part of it, I want to kind of I don't know, give a little bit of background about like my experience in the commercial bidding world, specifically for fence, right? And so that's what we're going to do first. I started bidding jobs back in like 2008. I have taken some classes through ABC, a local construction contractors association. I took some classes that they offered maybe in like 2010 or 12 or maybe 8. I don't really know. But anyway, so I started bidding jobs in 2008. And when I stepped into that role, a lot of it was pretty old school. There was some computer use and things like that going on. And I'm talking specifically within this organization, not necessarily like what the technologies that existed. Okay. So there was a lot of printed plans that were still kind of picked up from the plan room and brought back to the office, and we would unroll them. And everybody had scales on their desk and stuff like that. And I remember whenever I got this little device called a Scale Master, and this thing you could plug in the scale that you wanted it to be, and it had a little wheel, kind of like the wheel that you measure around somebody's backyard, right? Except a much smaller version of it, and you would roll this little wheel across a plan set and it would tell you how long the line was that you just measured. And I thought that was super cool. Like I thought we were getting fancy whenever I started using one of those things. Like I said, we were doing a little bit online. So mainly what we would do is we would like go to look at the plans online and figure out, okay, I need these 6 or 8 sheets or whatever. And then we would order them to be printed and we would go over and pick them up. And that was kind of our online computer type of process. Some of the jobs we would measure online, but if it was anything like more than a dumpster gate or something small, we were definitely printing it out. And then there was even sometimes where I would go to like some general contractor's office and I would actually measure the plans in their office. And so I would go over there, I would take my scales, my snazzy scale master, I'd take my notebook paper, all of that stuff, and I'd go into their office and I would basically redraw it on a piece of paper. And then I would take the scale and measure everything and put all the dimensions and, read through the specs and everything sitting in their office. And that's, it's a pretty crazy experience. But I'll tell you, it takes a lot of time, right? You got obviously travel time and stuff like that. And then redrawing it and double and triple checking to make sure you don't miss anything because you don't just have the plans that you can look at to double check something in 3 days. So I'd go through all that. And then I would come back to the office and I would break down all the material and all that stuff to finish bidding the job. And again, man, if you missed something, you just didn't know because you maybe didn't get another chance to look at the plans unless you sold the job. So that's kind of what was going on. A little bit of technology was being used, a little bit of old school stuff was still being used. So it was kind of like a hybrid deal. And me being, a younger fella, I knew that there had to be a better way. And I knew there had to be some way that we could leverage technology in order to make this process a little bit faster and easier and everything. I graduated high school in 2006. And so that was just a couple years before that. We obviously had to use some computers for high school. We weren't to the point where every student got a computer or any of that kind of stuff, but we did have them in the classrooms. We had them at home that we would use sometimes. So, I mean, I had some exposure there. And in 2008, I was in college and everyone, we were using computers for most things in college. And so I had some exposure to what they were capable of. And I knew that there had to be some way that we could kind of get away from all this paper stuff and everything. And again, there were computers in the office, but it just not as many as today, but there were some, and a lot of things were just kind of done old school way. Um, and so we didn't. It was just kind of this thing where nobody really liked doing takeoffs on a computer back then. I think back to it, and it's like, well, we did have smaller monitors than we have now, and nobody here for sure had more than one monitor. I remember, man, it was maybe like 2010 or 11 or 12 or something like that. And I brought a TV up here and I sat it on my desk and I was like, wow, this is crazy. Right. I had like I don't know, 42-inch monitor all of a sudden. And it was before like 4K TVs worked pretty decent. But man, this thing was like an old school plasma TV. And I remember if you looked at it too long, it would give you a headache because everything was kind of like pixelated and all that stuff. But yeah, I thought I was super fancy when I had that thing too. And so, just kind of started progressing to where we're using computers more and more and more. And now, if we're bidding a job off a set of plans, it's very rare that we ever print anything. I do have a plotter in my office. So I have a full size plotter that I can print plans out of. And I probably use that thing once or twice a year, something like that. Every time I use it, I have to fiddle around with it to even remember how to use it and to get it to work. I mean, I think I've had it for like, I don't know, 5 years or something like that. And I think I've replaced the toner in it once. So it doesn't get used very much. I remember when I was a little kid, we had it was like a Dodge machine, or I don't even know how I would describe it. If I wanted to look it up on Google, I have no idea where I'd start. It looked like an old school arcade game, kind of like, in the arcade, right? So it had a big cabinet with a screen that was at an angle in front of you. And we would get this Dodge book, and you would have all the jobs and like a little bit of description of what the job was and all the stuff in this book. And it would come in the mail every week. And then we could pick the plans that we wanted and order the film, I guess. I don't think all of the film just showed up. I think you had to tell them what film you wanted. And then it would be delivered, and it went in this machine. And it was, if you've ever, remember like film that was in a camera, so it's in a roll inside the little thing. It was very similar to that. And you would stick it in there, and it would project the plans up on the screen. And you had a little knob that you would turn, and that's how you would scroll back and forth through the plan set on that screen. And we had some sort of like, I don't know, grease markers or something like that you could like draw on the screen if you wanted and then wipe it off. And so it was a very similar process as doing it on paper, except you just ordered this film up and you would do it standing at that machine instead of doing it on a piece of paper. That thing lasted for a while. I really wish I still had it. I mean, it was pretty cool, and it would be really fun to, I don't know, use every once in a while for whatever reason, right? Just stick some old film in it and scroll through a set of plans and just kind of look at where we've come from. But I can remember that thing. I don't know why it went away. I don't know when it went away. I just remembered playing with it when I was a kid, and I had no idea what I was looking at, right? But it was fun to turn the knob and see the stuff go back and forth real fast and all that. So it was cool to play with. And then, like I said, we just kind of incorporated more and more and more technology as we went along. And that's what eventually led me to develop Simpalo, was kind of that, like, hey, we need to be using technology more. And so I made it to do this process the way that I wanted it to be done for ourselves. And that was kind of the birth of it. So let's actually talk about plans. I don't I'm going to share my screen, like I said, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just share it with you, and we'll kind of work through some of this stuff. It's not going to be super relevant all the time, but anyway, here it is. I don't know where to put me. It's kind of the question, because I can there. If I do that, it gives us a little bit more room. Okay, so I have a few different plan sets in here. Like I said, I went and found some on the internet. Kind of hard to do that, because well, that one's sideways. That is fixable, but we'll just skip that for now. You have to like, I mean, I talked with Chat GPT about it, and I was like, hey, can you find me a plan set that I can use? Because I wanted something that was publicly available, right? I didn't want to use anything that we're actually bidding on or any of that. And so I was able to, Chat GPT did not produce anything for me, but I was able to go around and search on Google, and I eventually found a handful of plan sets that I could download, and I haven't really looked through them. So hopefully they are actually relevant. But we're going to start with this title sheet or cover sheet. And so, obviously, what we have going on up here, we have the name of the project at the top, right? Heroes Memorial Building and Annex. So there's the name, and a lot of times they'll have some kind of maybe description that goes with them or something like that. But you see, this one says 50% construction documents. Okay, so as projects are developing, that number will increase, right? That 50% will increase. And so that, to me, that's kind of like a 50% completion. And so then maybe you'll see like a 65% set, an 80% set, or 75, something like that, and 90% set. And then the next thing you might see is like issued for bid, and it might say not for construction on it, and then you'll see one that's issued for construction. So the plans change over time and they develop more and they get a little more refined and things like that. So you always want to watch that kind of stuff, and you want to make sure that you know that you're bidding with the most current set of plans. So on this page, we do have the date underneath it, right? So it says 50% construction documents volume 1. So there's apparently multiple volumes to this project. And then September 23rd, 2022. So that's the date that this plan set came out. Sometimes you'll see revisions that are kind of like over here on the right-hand side maybe. This one doesn't have it. So there's your cover sheet. It will normally have, you'll see on the right-hand side there, the design team, right? So it normally has all of that. Sometimes it'll have a vicinity map in it, which I think is pretty handy. This one has a project address, so you could look it up and you could see where it is. Let's pull up another one here. Yeah, there you go. So this one has the vicinity map over there. So it kind of, even if you're looking at it on a map, you can see a little bit better of an idea of exactly where the project is. So this one says 100% construction documents for bid, right? You can see that there in the middle. So kind of going back to the other one, like I said, it was a 50%. This one's 100%. And you can see how those two are formatted different, right? And then if we go to this one, again, formatted different. And then this one, formatted different. So the next two that I just showed you did have maps on them. This one says construction documents. So you actually use these at the beginning of the construction project anyways. And then from there, it'll change as things do. But yeah, location's a big deal. And understanding the conditions that you're going to work in, obviously that's a big deal. So if I were to bid this job, then I would make sure that I looked at like what do they call it? Like a geotechnical report. And that's basically where they go out and they cut samples in the ground and they tell you the composition of the soil. And so it'll tell you, you can look at where they pulled 20 or 30 or 50 different core samples or whatever they pull out of a site. And like, I'm looking for rock. Yeah, digging in hard soil, it takes a little bit longer. It's slow, all of that stuff. But like, I'm really looking for rock. And if they're going through giant boulders over and over again, then it may not even be a job that I want to mess with. Like, I might just walk away from it. But anyway, the location and kind of understanding the conditions and stuff like that of the location, that's a big deal. So that's pretty much the cover sheet. And like I said, we looked at a few different examples here, right? But next, let's see what we can find here. Well, that one goes straight into drawings. So on this one, we have this like sheet index right here, right? So this lists out all the different pages that are in here. We'll talk about how this one starts with G and A and stuff like that. We'll get to that here in a minute. But let's go look at a different plan set. Okay, see how this one has all these abbreviations listed out? So this is where they define the abbreviations that are used in the plan set. And so, for instance, AC stands for air conditioning, right? Pretty pretty revolutionary, but ACP stands for acoustical ceiling panel. So it does come in handy sometimes being able to see these abbreviations and kind of see what the design team used to abbreviate different things in the plan set. It may or may not, I mean, it's probably not as big of a deal for us, but there's a lot of people that probably use it every time. We use it every once in a blue moon, right? So another thing that we want to look at is these reference symbols over here, or just the symbols in general, right? So they kind of define what all of these are. And so it's showing you detail number 1, it's listed on A101. And then I don't honestly know what this modifier is. So there's that. I wonder if does it have the modifier in the abbreviation? If I knew the alphabet. Should be right here, right? Let's see. Similar. Okay. So there you go. We got to use the abbreviations too. But sometimes you get weird stuff, right? That kind of is a little different. And so you might need to go back and take a look at this and just make sure you understand what you're looking at. A lot of times there's weird situations where you need to know like what this exterior elevation is telling me because there's four different ones on that sheet, it seems to me. Or maybe that's just showing you an example of the four different directions it could be looking, and it actually would look like this. That's probably what it is. I normally see elevations that are, something more like this one here, kind of with the shape. And I've never seen this symbol with them in all four directions, but there's all kinds of different stuff when you get into plan sets. And that's why having these abbreviations and having these symbols and all of this stuff in the beginning of the plan set is important. You'll see these general notes here. It's worth skimming through these things, but I honestly, I sometimes do, sometimes don't. But like I said, it's probably worth doing it. Some of the symbols that are going to be more important, obviously the detail symbols, right? Knowing that detail is on A101 is important because a lot of times it'll call out the fence and it'll have these detail reference or it'll reference details. And so understanding how to go find that's important. This is a section, which is also important. A lot of times you might see that where it's like cutting a fence or cutting a gate, something along those lines. And so being able to understand that if the fence is running across in front of you and you took that section, it would be like cutting that fence with a chainsaw at that line and looking at it from the end. And sometimes it's the opposite way, right? So sometimes it might show you an elevation and the section view is cutting across it horizontally, like cutting the middle of it and looking down at it. And a thing that comes to mind for me is a dumpster gate that we just looked at within the past couple days, and it had several of those on it. And so just kind of being able to decipher which way they're looking and where they're looking from and stuff like that is important. It they're fairly common in the fence world. Details and sections are. And then obviously these enlargements that you see right here, that's kind of this dash line in a square with a reference to it. So that's going to give you an enlargement of a certain area. And so sometimes you get into this stuff to where it might give you a big site plan, but then you have enlargements at the gates. And so understanding where you're going to stop your takeoff on the site plan and pick it up at the enlargement is important. That's going to be, for me, I go to the edges of that box. So if I'm looking at the site plan, it has the enlargement, uh, box on there showing us where it's enlarged. I go up to the edge of the box and then I pick up on the other side of the box on that enlargement sheet. And the reason they do it is because if you have a really big site and, it might make your 20 or 30-foot gates look really tiny and you can't really tell how the fence is running and how the gates are lining up and where the guard shack goes and all that kind of stuff. So that would be a good example of when we would see an enlargement. And I'm just kind of looking through these to see door numbers sometimes. I don't, and that's not jumping off the page. Oh, here it is right here. Door number 101A-A. So you'll sometimes see these in gates. And where I see that in gates, and the example that comes to mind anyway, is when you have let's say a sports complex, right? And you've got a bunch of gates going in and out of ticket areas. Some of them have different ingress hardware, some of them have different egress hardware, they have different hinges, things like that. That's when it's important to understand what those door numbers are and then go to a door schedule, and you'll look through that door schedule and it might actually itemize all the stuff on the door schedule, or it might reference a hardware number. So if you see it reference a hardware number, that is going to be found somewhere in the specs, probably. It might be in the plan set, but it's probably going to be in the specs. They'll have a section in there that has all of the different hardware groups or the hardware numbers that they have set up for the project. And that's where you want to go and you see what kind of egress device, what kind of ingress device, what kind of hinges, all that type of stuff. And sometimes it'll give you information about like, the material of the gate, the infill of the gate, things along those lines. But mainly I'm looking for the hardware in those scenarios. Um, like I said, the general notes might be worth looking at. Yeah, I don't do it a whole lot, but it is it is important, right? Because it'll give you stuff about the project and that you might not get anywhere else. So, like right here, detailed drawings and larger scale drawings take precedence over small scale drawings, right? Written dimensions take precedence over scaled dimensions, do not scale drawings. So, you have that type of stuff in the general notes, and it's not going to repeat it on every page. So, that's why going there is important just to pick up some stuff like that. So, let's bounce back over to this other plan set and let's see if I can find a drawing index. Again, abbreviations, symbols, materials. What is that? Some code analysis. So I guess that's the code that applies to the project. All right. So this is showing you, oh, you can see right there, 50% CD, 100% CD. And so this, I guess, is showing you all the pages that were issued in those different sets. I was hoping to find the page index on one of these plan sets. Let's see. Let's see. Well, there's one. Let me rotate this sheet. So I need to go 270. Yeah. All right. So here's the index of the drawings. Sorry for that like super awkward pause for anyone any listeners out there. All right. So the index of the drawings. I want to spend just a minute here and I want to talk about the way that these names are written. And so obviously this index, right? It's a list of all the pages. So at the top, it starts A 0.1, which is the title sheet, A 0.2 code summary. And then we go all the way through those and we get to A 1.0 basement demolition plan, A 1.1 first floor demolition plan. And then we get to A 2.0 proposed basement. So proposed means the one that they're going to build. And then A 2.1, 2.2 are proposed first and second floor plans. So what we're about to talk about, as far as the way that these numbers are made, there are standards. And so there's a national CAD standard or NCS, and that uses formatting from the American Institute of Architects or AIA. If you've ever done any projects and you've done any AIA billing or anything else like that, that's the same people, is American Institute of Architects. So there are standards and there is like general rule of formatting and stuff like that, but it's not always going to be that way. Okay. It's not like it's a strict set of rules. It's kind of it, like I said, it's just not always going to be that way, right? Because it's not a super strict set of rules. But anyway, so the discipline is what they start with. Okay, in this, it all well, yeah, the discipline is what these are starting with. It's really hard for me. I don't like to speak in absolutes because I like to say nothing is always, right? So nothing is always. There's some plans out there that you'll see that's like sheet 23 of 147. And so they don't start with the disciplines. But anyway, most of the time they start with the discipline. So we'll start with this. A is your architectural plans, which is normally going to they will have site plans, they'll have floor plans, they'll have building elevations, wall sections, all that kind of stuff like to do with the building, right? And the C plans are your civil drawings. Let's see, are they? Of course, there's no civil drawings even in this plan set here, but the C plans are civil drawings. And so it'll be the same thing. The sheet number will just start with a C instead of an A. And so those are going to show you things like existing site conditions, your site demo work, the grading, utilities, site plans, all those type of stuff, right? So I kind of relate civil with like flat work, dirt work, utilities, things along those lines that are outside. And obviously the foundation, the dirt work that goes underneath the building and stuff falls into the civil world too. And then you'll have like S is for structural. So obviously, this is going to have your steel structure. This is going to show you the columns and beams and stuff like that. It's going to show you concrete footings. It'll have, probably retaining walls in there. Sometimes you'll look at like fence details and it'll tell you to reference the structural for the footing. So then you have to go try to find something in the structural drawings that tells you what type of footing to use on your fence. So structural sometimes comes into play. Civil, architectural, and landscape, you'll find fence in those a lot. Not always, but a lot of the time. Sometimes there's like random disciplines that I don't know if they're made up or if they're just uncommon that you'll see on plans. So just know that the beginning of it, right? That's kind of where they start off with their discipline, right? So it kind of helps you to categorize the plans. That's another good word to use there is category. So again, sometimes there's weird ones. A lot of times there's, kind of the common stuff in there. So most of the time I don't go look in the plumbing drawings, right? I'm normally not going to go look in the mechanical drawings. So we'll call those MEPs, mechanical, electric, and plumbing are kind of ones that we don't spend a lot of time in. Although the electrical drawings, you do need those from time to time for your gate automation. So we're doing a job right now as we speak. Well, not as we speak, but they were out there today and they ran 460 or 480 volt power out to the gate operators. And had we not looked at the electrical drawing and realized that there was this giant power running out there, then we wouldn't have been able to prepare for that when we were bidding the job. But because I actually went through the electrical plans on that project and I saw that it was 480 running out there, we were able to put the right operators that would take the 480 and step down transformers for locks and stuff like that on it. So electric drawings do mean something a decent bit of the time. Another common use for me with electric drawings is if I see gates and I think, are these automated? Right. So I see something, I think something, whatever that leads me to think, are these automated? Well, then I'll go look at the electric drawings. And if I see power ran to the gate operator or to where a gate operator would be, that's a pretty good indication that it's automated. Even with that, I'm going to quote it on a separate line item because I don't want to include it in my price and someone else not include it in the price. And then they see this big difference between our two prices and they just throw mine away. So I'll put it on there as a separate line item. And I would probably say something like, hey, gate automation, because the electrical site plan indicated power ran to the gate or, something along those lines. So I try to quote that kind of stuff separate, but I do try to be as inclusive as I can. Yeah, so we talked about C for civil, A for architectural, S for structural, G for general, L for landscaping. I mean, this list goes on and on. If you want to go look it up, you can. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but there is a big list of, like I said, kind of the standards, right? And again, these are a naming convention, so there's not any strict rules that go along with it. But the next part of the number typically means something as well. And if we go back up to the top and let's look at these architectural drawings right here as an example. So the O, so A or zero, sorry, a 0.1. So these zeros should be like general drawings. Uh, I don't know, egress and accessibility, like that could go in life safety stuff, which would be another discipline. But the zero normally means general. And then one at the beginning typically means plans. And so now you see this is following that to an extent, but then we get down into the twos, right? And those are still plans. And so the twos kind of, according to the rules, are elevations. So here's a perfect example of how there's a set of rules, but a lot of times real life plan sets kind of vary from those rules a little bit. And they'll do that because it fits this project. There's something about this job that makes it make sense to them, or this design team just does it that way, or something along those lines, right? So for them, they used 5 for elevations, but you see it is 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 are all the elevations. And then 7.1 and 7.2 door and window schedule, finish schedule. And then we get down into the eights, and those are all details. So just because it doesn't follow the rules doesn't mean that it's not following some sort of logic. And so you can look here, and that way I know if I'm looking for a detail in this plan set, I know it's probably a 8 point something, right? And so it narrows down where I'm trying to look. That's the point of me telling you all of this stuff is so you're equipped with what you need to narrow down where you're going to look when you're trying to find what you need. Uh, I think it's cool, right? I don't know. I think it's cool that this stuff does have like some method to the madness because for years of my life, I didn't know that there was a method. And I was never smart enough to like recognize a pattern or any of that stuff. I just thought it was random blah 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 stuff. And eventually figured out, oh, hey, wait a minute, there is some pattern and there is some method to this. So that same first number type of thing, it goes through all of them, right? So civil, if it's C1, that's a civil well, as the rule goes, that's a civil plan. C2, it's a civil elevation. Sometimes you will see elevations in the civil world. They'll do like these section views that show the grade, existing and proposed grade. Let me add this little tidbit in there. The reason that you can tell existing and proposed grades when you look at that section view is because the existing grade will be a light line and the proposed grade will be a dark line. So I was helping someone bid a fence job the other day and they were looking at it and it was removing and replacing fence and it wasn't really clear like where it started and stopped. And so I was able to show them like, hey, you can tell because the line gets darker, right? And so the dark line is going to be your new fence. The lighter line is the existing fence that's remaining in place. And I forget what they were doing. They were adding a concrete pad or something like that to a site. And so it was, and it wasn't super clear, right? Like the way I'm describing it makes it sound a little bit less vague than it really was. But anyway, know that light lines will kind of show you the existing stuff and dark lines show you the proposed. And so then the following numbers are the sequence number, which again, according to the standard practices and standard formatting, those also mean something. So A101 would be the first floor plan. A102 would be the second floor plan. And as we look at this one, it is that, right? You can see A 1.0 is the basement demolition plan, not floor plan, but so the 1.0 is the basement, 1.1 is first floor, 1.2 is second floor. So overall, it kind of follows the same logic, although the numbering's not exactly the same, but that's fine. You're going to run into that. I mean, if you look at 20 or 50 or 100 plan sets a year, you're going to see it done multiple different ways. So there's some bad news for us in the fence world is that there's no, again, nothing is always, but the vast majority of the time, there's not a fence discipline. Okay, so there may be something like a T or an SES that's for security access control, something along those lines, and your fence might wind up in there, depending on how important the fence is to the project. If you get something where it's a really high security facility, then they might have the design team spend the time to create drawings that are specific to perimeter security. And so it might have, it kind of its own area or its own discipline that is perimeter security that would have your fence and automation and access controls and cameras or, whatever else they have, right? So there is a chance that it's in there. But the vast majority of the time, we're looking for fence normally in architectural, civil, or landscaping. And it could be in any of those, and it could be in all of those. That's when things really get crazy is whenever it's in all of them, right? And then you might even have conflicting information among the different ones. And sometimes the fence world is just fun. And I'm sure other trades deal with it too, right? We like to talk about it because we are fence people and we deal with it. But I'm sure other folks do. It's a time for a tea break. There you go. Nice sound effect. So we just kind of look around, right? And we know how to find site plans now, right? We understand enough of the way that the numbers are written to know that normally the site plan is going to start with A1, maybe A2, and like this is the floor plan for A2, right? Or C1 or something like that. So we know we're looking for them at the beginning of the discipline. So we know if we've made it to A 6.3, like we've gone way further than where the plan will be that shows the fence. But you get back in there, and that's where you'll find your details and elevations and sections and all that fun stuff. So again, maybe on architectural, maybe on civil, maybe on landscaping, maybe somewhere else. So all of this, it sounds kind of complicated, right? I try my best to deliver stuff, and so I hope that I don't make it sound more complicated than even it already is. But I promise it's not. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so if you just practice, you're gonna get there. And allow yourself plenty of time to bid the jobs. And in my personal opinion, I think it's okay to bow out of a project that you don't have time to bid. Obviously, we all want to bid everything that we can, right? Because the more jobs we bid, the better odds we have of winning. But I think it's okay to bow out of a project when you don't have time. And if you want to be like really respectful about it, or I don't know if respectful is the right word, right? But if you're kind of worried about the relationship with the contractor, I mean, just call them or shoot them an email and be like, hey, man, I'm sorry. Or hey, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I just don't have time to get it done. Right. I'm going to miss out on this one, but I'll catch you on the next one, something like that. And I will tell you, I've been in situations where somebody gets not super thrilled about that because they were depending on us and we're letting them down. And so that might come up here and there. I don't think it's super common, but I do think it's better to reach out to them and let them know something. I think communicating with people is really important in general. And so this is another example of where communicating with them is important. And like I said, allow yourself plenty of time. You don't want to be going through a plan set for your third or fourth or fifth time, or, this year or ever. And the job's bids tomorrow and you don't really understand what you're looking at, right? Because that will bite you in the butt and you'll miss things, and you're going to wind up destroying the relationship with the contractor more than you would have by just bowing out of it. And you're going to be all stressed out about it and everything else once you figure out that you missed something. So, anyway, like I said, don't rush through it. Just take your time and just practice. Like it's like anything else in the world that you do. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. And these you think about how many people have ever looked at a set of plans, right? There's not it's not anything super complicated, and it's not anything that you can't figure out. So just hang in there and just spend time doing it. And if you run into some situation and you do have questions, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to another buddy. And hopefully you've been to some networking events and you know some other people in the fence world and you can rely on them a little bit. So just be smart about what you're doing, right? And hang in there, keep practicing, give yourself plenty of time and you'll get there. Well, so at this point, we've got about 15 minutes left in the show. And here's what I thought we would do. I thought we would just kind of go through one of these plan sets, or maybe multiple if there's no fence on the first one that I'll look at. And I'll just kind of walk you through the whole process of me looking at plans and trying to find fence. Hopefully that's okay with everyone, because that's what we're going to do. Unless you have questions, feel free to let me know. So again, we have the sample plan set number one. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to use search. And you can do this in anything that I don't know about anything, but most stuff that you're using, you can search. You can hit Control F, Command F. There's a search tool built into it, whatever that may be. Now, if you want to search for fence, search for FENC. And the reason we do that is because it's going to show us fence or fencing, either one. And
Mhm.
if you search for one or the other, then you're going to be limited to whichever one you search for, right? So make sure you search both and you just kind of sit there and go through the results. Check this out, this sideways stuff still. And so what I like, this is in Simpalo, right? Because this is what I use. Like I told you, I'm going to walk you through the process I would do. This is how I would do it. But I like how it kind of gives me a phrase in the search results. I think preview, the like built the default or native PDF viewer in Mac does the same thing. I think if you search it, it kind of gives you a little bit of information on the left hand ribbon. You don't have to just sit there and keep clicking that next arrow and going to every single search result. And so I can kind of scroll through here and I bet this is tree protection fence, right? Yep. So tree protection fence, which I normally don't bid that stuff. Here we go. So I can find, oh, this is a fun one. So there's our dumpster. It says dumpster enclosure plan. And so we can see there's a little piece of fence right there, right? So fence goes around this dumpster enclosure with slats in it. There's gates. And so this isn't a super crazy plan. Um and we have everything here on the same sheet, it looks like. So on the left hand side we have the plans that we can measure off of. We have a layout. It shows us the gates. It shows us slats and stuff like that. And then we scroll over and there's elevations. And so it tells us to use 4-inch post on everything. 1 and 5/8 top rail. It doesn't tell you what they call it, brace wire, but bottom tension wire. And that's a lot of what we do, right? Is we see stuff like this and we say, what's a brace wire? Well, they intend to have bottom tension wire on it. And 6 foot 9 gauge black vinyl coated chain link with black slats. That's super fun. I don't know. Have you ever installed slats in black vinyl coated chain link? Right? Have you ever? Well, so we normally use 8 gauge finish, 9 gauge core, 8 gauge finish, and sliding slats in that stuff is a giant pain in the butt. It's one of those deals where you have to like get some Dawn dish soap and mix it with water and dip them in there to try to lubricate it a little bit to get it to go through the wire. It's a pain. But yeah, so there we go. There's a little dumpster enclosure on here. So I can tell you the search piece of that is really important to me. Like back in the olden days, before we were able to search through plans, I mean, we would sit there and click on every single sheet and go through all of them. Even when I was using it on a computer early, there was no search in the stuff we were using, at least. And so we'd have to go through all of them. Well, what you wind up with is you get on a job that it's a giant warehouse, and this giant warehouse has perimeter fence all the way around it, and you get real excited because you're bidding all this perimeter fence, right? And you're like, oh man, this baby's got 17 cantilever gates with their automated and all of this stuff. Well, what you miss is the 4 cages that are inside the building. And when you sign a contract and it says, hey, you're responsible for everything that's in your scope of work, and you sign that contract because you're excited to go, and then you find out later there's some cages in there and you got to have some hard conversations, and it will work out for you one way or the other, either good or bad. But yeah, so searching through the plan sets is a big deal. And again, even early days of me using a computer, there was no search. Obviously, when I was flipping through pieces of paper, there was no search. And that is a real life lesson learned, is missing trucker cages, and maybe there's some sort of like pharmaceutical cage inside or whatever that is. This maybe is another example, right? This dumpster, because we're on A801.2. Now, if we went back through this plan set and we looked at the site plan, it may tell us there's an enlargement on this page around a dumpster enclosure, which may have led us here anyway. But yeah, so searching is important. Let's see what's going on with this one. So here you go. Existing well equipment and fence to remain. So it's just showing you nothing's coming out there. But this is another site plan. pretty pretty decent little site plan, right? Everything looks nice and tidy, and all the lines look good and stuff like that. So, some of them you get are good, some of them you get are worse. And again, you just deal with what you get. At least that's what we do. I mean, some people might just be like, "Nope, your plan sucks. Too bad. I'm going to move on and bid something else." And I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fair. Tea break again. So all of the everything that you're looking at on here, these are telling you that this is some sort of material, right? You can see how that's different hatch pattern, and then you get over here, and there's a different one. Same thing here, two different ones. You got different kind of infills in the different shapes, so it's kind of giving you all the different materials. Or, well, in this case, I think this whole area here is kind of like a do not disturb area. And then this is showing you another do not disturb area, right? Existing sewer easement to remain. So the infill, the hatch patterns, the whatever you want to call them, they all mean something. And again, we can go sometimes it'll be on this sheet. You'll have like a key up here and maybe in the top right, the lower right, something along those lines. And those keys will kind of indicate what the different line types mean, what the different patterns or infills mean. Sometimes you have to flip back to the beginning to one of the the cover sheet or that first page behind it or something like that to kind of get back to some other index that tells you what it means. But it all has some meaning. Is the big point there? Let's see what this one's got. What are we looking at here? Okay, so again, I think search is probably another important thing here, right? 6 foot pre-finished steel ornamental fence going around this area. I don't. I was hoping I could maybe find. We need to find some details, right? Let's just kind of look at that a little bit. Here we go. One, let me tell you too, if you're going to do a takeoff using anything, I don't care if you're using a computer, if you're using a scale, if you're using whatever, you're going to have a lot of times where there's a graphic scale on the site plan. And hopefully here in just a second, I can show you what I'm talking about. Huh. Okay, well, you have a scale. This one isn't a graphic scale, but it does say 1/8 equals 1 foot. And so I always want to verify that scale with something. And what's really great is when the plan has dimensions on it. And I don't see any dimensions on this plan at all. Maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see any dimensions. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the scale. So I'll go ahead and do it. I'll show you real quick. So 1/8 equals 1 foot. And now I'm going to put a measurement in a doorway. All right. And by putting the measurement in the doorway, I understand kind of like roughly the size a door should be. And so that measures 2.93 feet. That's to me, that's within the margin of error for me clicking in perfectly the right spot. And so I just verified the scale. There's no dimension on here. There's nothing else that I can use. Again, this is a lesson that I've learned because we did a job and the scale was wrong and we were like 800 feet short on custom built ornamental fence. And we had to have some hard conversations. And those, it like, as with anything, it works out one way or another, right? But we had to have some hard conversations. I sat down and I did a screen record deal and I walked him through the whole process and I showed him like, hey, this is how I did my takeoff. This is how I set my scale. And this is how I figured, like, we didn't figure out the scale was wrong until we were out there on site. This job in the general contractor office had been passed around 3 or 4 different times. And so it had been through several different people. And like, some of them were less familiar with all the notes and stuff like that. But anyway, it turned in to be a little bit of a mess. So going back to what I was talking about with the different infills and hatch patterns and stuff. So this one does have it has this like key or index over here on the right hand side. It's not there we go. Whoops. So right there, it's showing us what those different infills mean. And so now we can take those and we can match them to the drawing. And then up here, we have some more symbols. So it's telling us what all these are. So, like, if we see that black arrow, that's primary egress, not a super huge deal for us, right? But just kind of goes to show that sometimes there's more information and there's more guidance on the page that you're looking at, and sometimes there's not. So there's a couple examples of that. Let's go back to our details here. So this is seems to be fairly typical of a detail that we'll see. And so it's going through aluminum aluminum latch and electric strike provide panic egress hardware in direction of path as specified. Okay, so there's a note written on there, and that note is obviously seems to be different, right? To me, that just looks like a fork latch that's drawn on the gate. And what it's telling you to do is not a fork latch. And I think that gap, 3-inch gap between the gate and the post, that's crazy. But anyway, so an electric strike. What electric strike? All right. You want panic egress hardware? What panic egress hardware? And so sometimes we would be able to take this and then we can go look in the door schedule, maybe would be a spot that I would go look. And then I would go look in the specs and I would look at the hardware, the door hardware section of the specs, and I would try to see if there was anything in the door hardware specs that clarify this. And if neither of those two things exist, right? If there's no door schedule that tells us anything about what type of strike and panic bar to put on here, and there's nothing in the specs that tell us what to do, well, then kind of my plan B is I might look at what they're putting on the doors and put something like that outside, or I might just put some stuff that I've used in the past or that I know works. And so that's kind of there's a few different ways that you could handle that, right? And so obviously the easiest and the best thing is to find something that's in the drawings or in the specs that tells you what to use. But we get a lot of that kind of stuff where it's not super clear. And so what I do is I try to understand the intention of the project. So what are they trying to do, right? They're trying to have a panic bar on it that someone can hit the panic bar, they can get out of the gate, or someone could walk up and enter a code or swipe a card or do something like that, and it's going to release the electric strike. So I just thought through that process, right? And now I think, oh, well, I need to make sure the electric strike is going to work with the card reader or the keypad or whatever is going to allow people in. So there's another path of going to find more information is try to find out what that is. And again, allow yourself enough time. And when you go through this stuff at first, it's going to take you a little bit, but just keep keep chipping away at it there and you'll get it. Let's see. So okay, so this one tells you to put it in concrete footing per manufacturer's details. Sometimes you might see put it in a concrete footing per structural drawings or per something else. So this one tells you the concrete footing 10.5-inch diameter. That's interesting, right? And 3-foot embed. You do have this little space underneath, right? So you kind of have a space from the bottom of the post to the bottom of the footing. And some people will like come out there and verify that you're doing that. And so this is section views. And I don't see any markings on these details showing us where the section is, but it's not that hard to figure out, right? It's a fence panel that they've cut. And you can see what I'm talking about. It's like they cut the fence panel with a knife and they're looking at it from the end. And so now we can see the different runners. We can see the picket there in the center. We can see the post. And so it kind of, I don't know if these dimensions are on the other drawing or not, but maybe it gives us more dimensions than what we had before. It shows us how the fence sits above this concrete footing or this concrete slab, and there's no footing under it. And then the footing, when we get to the fence post, is integrated into that slab. Like, you don't see a line in between, right? So that's a thing to sort through is, are you are you going to set these posts and just leave the concrete a little low, and then the concrete people come out and they pour it, and then you come back and install the fence after? I would prefer that over trying to core drill and get that whole edge out here to line up right. So stuff like that is what we're looking for. Let's scroll down and let's look at a couple more. See if we can find anything else interesting in here. So this references an enlargement. We've talked about that before. So the enlargement is A6 on sheet A482. And you can see what I'm talking about, where there's that dashed box that goes all the way around the outside edge of it. And so that's showing us the extents of the enlargement. So our entire fence fits inside of it this time, but if the fence was coming from another direction and connecting to this little enclosure, then we would know where to stop our takeoff on this page and where to pick it up inside that enlarged area. Here's a section view. And so the line is where it's cut. And again, it's like you just take a knife and you chop it and you look at the end of it, is what that section's going to be. You see, there's a few of them. This is an elevation. So here's kind of a, remember earlier I got all confused because that one had 4 arrows pointing in all 4 directions, but this is what you normally see. So this is showing you that if you go to J1 on A201, it's going to show you an elevation of that side of the building. And it's going to be like you were standing in that spot looking the direction that arrow is pointing. And so you would see the whole outside of the building. You might go there to see what the fence is doing, right? Because you got a set of stairs that's going up, and this fence is kind of going under the stairs, maybe here, or under a landing up top. So if there is also an elevation from this side. So I might go look at it just to make sure I understand what the fence is doing. Again, you've got the infill, the hatch patterns that are indicating different things. Scroll on down, see what we have next. Here is the elevation from one side. Sorry about the red square. There you go. So it kind of shows you what the fence is actually going to look like standing there. And again, the part where it goes under the stairs or under that landing is around on the back side. I don't know if it's going to be on the same drawing or not, but you can see what I'm talking about, right? You can go here and you can kind of see how the fence is standing and where it ties into the building, how it interacts with the stairs and stuff like that. A little bit easier than you can on the plan view sometimes. So elevations are important. This is an elevation. Like I said, you're standing looking at the building, right? You see what I'm saying? And then you also have more sections, right? All of these sections over here. These are all dimensions. So it's showing you floor and then 2 foot, 4 foot, 14, all the way up through there. So sometimes that means something to us. Either A, if you're working on, say you're working on the second story, right? And you need to figure out how high you have to lift something to get it onto that balcony. Well, there's where you would find out how high you have to lift it. If the fence doesn't have a height on it, this might come into play. I might even set a scale based on this dimension over here and then pull some measurements off the fence in this elevation view, all of that stuff. And so here you do actually have the height of the fence shown. So it shows you that fence is 6 foot tall. Let's go back. Let's see. What else can we see? Oh, we already looked at that one. That's what we were just on. Let's see. Another plan view of that same thing. I didn't pick very good plan sets, huh? There's not a whole lot of fence on them. There's a section view showing us the fence, and you can see it just runs on the outside of a column that's holding up those stairs. So nothing weird there. It's all going in the edge of that concrete footing that we saw earlier. A door schedule. Good. Let's talk about this door schedule for a minute, and I think I'll wrap up. So where was the search result on this door schedule? Oh, it's over here. It's not even in there. Door comments 11. Let's see if that number 11 or number 12 is in here anywhere. Door hardware. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Here's the comments over here on the right hand side. Door comments, general door notes, right? So you see all of this stuff applies to the doors. Sometimes there are gate things in there. So you got to have that. Let's ornamental fence, gate, provide latch and deadbolt, provide panic hardware and access control. So here's what is that? I don't think that's a gate. Yeah. Yeah, that's glass. So do we see our gates on here anywhere? Well, if we did, then you can see here we have door hardware. All right. I'm not going to spend the time of figuring out which one of these is a gate, but you can see the door hardware and then access control. The ones with Y, obviously, yes, access control. And this is where I was telling you sometimes it comes into play too, because you can see the materials that the gate's built out of. You can see different things like that. But the door hardware, see how they're just numbers? So I'm wondering 10, 3 by 8. Yeah, I'd have to kind of study it a little bit, but 10, yeah, they're just door hardware sets. And I don't know, I haven't looked at these plans before right now. So I don't know if the door hardware sets are defined in the plan set or in the specs. But either way, if our gates are listed on here indeed, and remember the one gate has the electric strike, the panic bar, we don't know ingress. It did say access control in those notes over there, but we don't know ingress. And so this is just the next step that we would take, right? We would find the gate listed in this door schedule. We would find the hardware number, and now we have to go figure out what that door hardware is. And that's probably where they define what type of panic bar, what type of closer, what type of electric strike, all of that stuff is inside that door hardware number. So again, it just takes some time, right? You just go through and just take your time, look at all the little notes and the symbols and the details and all of that stuff and just try to understand what they mean. And it's it's not rocket science, man. It's just it's just fence. Uh, but you do have to y we touch a lot of random stuff in a plan set sometimes. Like I told you earlier, right? The electric site plan, if there's gate automation, then we might go to that electric site plan and figure out what kind of power is running to it or confirm that there is gate automation. You might be able to see where your low voltage is running or something like that if your access control system's tying into the building, or there's just a lot of different scenarios where we need to kind of bounce around. Grading is an important one. I didn't look at that. I don't know if I can if I can find one. Let's see. Probably not gonna find any real quick, am I? Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, it's not looking like I'm gonna find one super quick, but I'd like to show you one just because that way we can kind of see what they look like, right? They have contour lines on them, and the contour lines show us where the grade, how it's changing. So contour lines will show you if elevation is increasing or decreasing. And that's how, like, if you're putting a chain link fence in, it's important, right? It's important to understand where the grade is. And if the grade is fluctuating up and down drastically, then we know, oh, we need to add some extra terminal post in here. So that's why I kind of would like to show you one because, like I said, it is pretty important. But man, you can see, I mean, I did put a bunch of plan sets in here, and there's tons of results for the word grade. So yeah, maybe I'll be able to find you one day and show you, but I can't do this and also just keep talking at the same time. It's kind of hard to concentrate on both. Oh, I don't think that plan set even had a civil, did it? Anyway, yeah, you want to look at the grade stuff because that's again, that's where we can go and we get an indication of the way that the site is going to lay, what the elevations are doing, if it's going up and downhill, all of that stuff. And that's all going to tell us how many terminal posts we need to have in there. And so that's one of the things that we try to do in practice is to actually look at the let's just do this. Let's see. Site grading and drainage plan C5. So let's go search C5. I don't want to see the drawing. I don't want to see it on the oh gosh. Well, we're doomed. I'm not going to show I don't know how I can't find one. Sorry. But anyway, let's try this. I'm now just going to go to Google and look and see if I can find an image of one real quick. Is that going to work? All right, there we go. Sorry for all of that hubbub, but here we are. So all of these lines that are a little bit squiggly out here, right? So those are all the contour lines that I was talking about. And so maybe what's going on is if you could read it, there's numbers on there. So right there is a number, right there is a number, right there. And they're the darker ones. So I think those are called major contour lines and the lighter ones are minor. We learned all about that whenever I went to civil engineering school, and I don't really remember that well. But either way, that's how you can look at it and you can tell if you're going uphill or downhill, right? So this might be going downhill, and then this is at the bottom of the hill, and then it goes back up this way, or vice versa, right? This could be the top or the bottom, depending on how this thing's laid out. But you can see what I'm talking about. If our fence was running across this area, there's a lot of grade change going on getting from here. Let's say that's up that hill, kind of running across and then coming back down the hill. And then we run across a flat and then we go back up the hill. If you just looked at a site plan, you're never going to know that that grade exists that's going up or down or whatever that's doing. Right. So again, looking at the grade of a project is important. I mean, man, look at that side over here. You see that? That's a ton of elevation change going on over there. So if your fence ran across here, I mean, you're going all off up or down or whatever you're doing, and there's a lot of grade change on there. So again, it is important, and so that's definitely one that I would go find. That's going to be in your civil plan somewhere, probably, but it's a it's a big deal. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the end. I'm all I'm all like discombobulated now because it took me 10 minutes to get smart enough to just go look at Google. But I think we've kind of covered a decent bit of stuff. And I mean, I could do a takeoff for you and show you that, but I would imagine you're probably doing that some kind of way already. And if you're not, then maybe we'll do that next time, right? Maybe I'll take one of these, maybe I'll take a plan set that actually has fence on it that I kind of look at before and make sure it's a good one. And we'll kind of just go through the takeoff. And I can just kind of walk you through as I'm going step by step and tell you what I'm looking at, tell you what I'm looking for, tell you what I see, all of that kind of stuff. And I definitely want to get into looking at the specs because we didn't talk about that at all. There's a handful of project manuals that I stuck in here for us to look at too. And we'll get back to that, right? So that'll be the plan next time, I think, is to go through and actually do a full takeoff on a job and it be a fence job that we can actually kind of dig into a little bit. And then we'll get into specs too. So yeah, that'll be the plan. But man, that was an interesting experience, right? Because I've never done anything like that where I kind of do a screen share and just walk through it. So I hope that it benefited someone. And if you have questions, call me or email me or whatever you want to do, and I'll be happy to help any way that I can. And aside from that, we'll see you next time. Thanks.